Howdy, folks. My name is Ladi, and this is Ladi's Rockucation. This is where Professor Mark teaches me things about music that is not normally in my wheelhouse. And today, he's got me wearing some devil horns. I'm really not sure what's going on with that, but I'm sure I'll find out. Mark, what's up?
Not much, man. I'm excited about this one. So we've been putting Ladi through his paces. We did a three-part series on Van Halen.
Where he made me cry.
Made him cry. I don't think there will be tears today.
Oh, okay.
Won't promise. No, I don't think that there will be. But I thought we would do another kind of classic rock band, and we're going to do acdc. This is one of those bands that if an alien spaceship came to Earth and they said, Mark, what is rock and roll? I would show them acdc.
Really?
Really. For my money, you can't get any more classic American rock and roll, even though they're from Australia by way of Scotland. I don't think that you can find any more quintessential rock and roll. So we're going to start from the beginning. I think is the best place to start. Okay. We're going to start from their album. Either I think it was TNT in Australia or High Voltage. I can't remember. They changed names several times.
Why?
Because they reissued in the United States and it was a different name. In any case,
okay.
This is one of their first big hits. It's A Long Way to the Top. Now, acdc was started by two brothers, Malcolm and Angus Young. The Young family originated in Scotland, and during one of the worst winters in the 1950s, a ton of Scottish people immigrated to Australia because there was this apparently a travel deal to help them immigrate and become Australian citizens.
Oh.
So they go down to Australia, and young Angus started playing guitar around 5 or 6 reportedly, and they would practice after he got out of school, so he was always wearing his schoolboy's outfit when they would practice. Then they got a singer by the name of Bon Scott to be their frontman. Now his real name was Ronald Scott, but in the class there was another Ronald, and since he was from Scotland as well, they called him the Bonnie Scotsman, and so Bon Scott stuck around. Now, this is one of their big hits. It's A Long Way to the Top. It came out in 1975. And
so was this one of their first songs?
One of the first ones. Yeah, one of the first ones.
Was it a big deal here?
Not as big as in Australia.
Okay.
Not as big as in Australia, but it did start to break over, but not until the late 70s, around 77 or 78, that they started to really hit here. But by that point, they started reissuing a lot of these older ones. But this was filmed in Australia, and I believe Melbourne. I think somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's A Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. So, Ladi just asked, are those bagpipes? They certainly are. So here's the thing about that. Bon had been in a band before. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Scottish kind of themed band, and they had bagpipes in it. And the producers were like, hey, we should have Bon play the bagpipes in this, since he's a Scotsman and was in a band with bagpipes. Never played them before.
Nice. He never played them.
He wasn't the guy in the band who played bagpipes. And so Bon had to learn how to play the bagpipes to do this. Now, the other thing that I think maybe I should address this early on is their genre. Because I think a lot of people think there's a lot of argument. Are they heavy metal? Are they metal? Are they rock and roll? The band itself would say we're straight down the road rock and roll. And I think this song is a good example of that. Chuck Berry was one of Angus's biggest influences.
Really?
And so if you listen to a lot of their guitar work, it sounds like classic American rock.
Now, that's what they would say. What do you say? Is it hard? Is it rock? Is it metal?
It's rock and roll.
It's rock and roll, period.
Period. Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, one of the producers said the best way to infuriate the band was to say that they were punk. They hated that.
Did they really?
Yeah, they said there was no quicker way to infuriate the band than to say they were punk. They would say rock and roll.
But they were in the late 70s, 80s. So this is when punk was becoming a thing.
Huge.
Okay.
In fact, when they go to the UK, they get booked with a lot of punk bands. Hated it.
Really?
Yeah, they thought they were classic rock and roll in the vein of Chuck Berry. Now, interestingly enough, they're called acdc because brothers Angus and Malcolm were trying to come up with a name for the band, and they saw on their sister Margaret's Singer sewing machine the wall plug, and it said acdc, alternating current, direct current, and they thought, that's the name. It's energy. It's energy. It's electric.
Is that true?
It's 100%
Oh
true.
my God.
Yeah. And it was on their sister Margaret's sewing machine. Interestingly enough, when they first started out, they lied about Angus's age. So Angus is the young man.
The one of the kids out? How old is
Right
he?
there. I can't remember. I think he's around 22 around here.
Okay.
But they lied and said he was younger to justify the school outfit. They thought it was hysterical. His first outfit, his sister Margaret sewed for him at home. And then he wore it out and broke it. And so he had to actually use his former schoolboy outfit. That is one of my favorite lines in all of music. I think there's nothing better that captures rock and roll. If you think it's easy doing one-night stands, try playing in a rock and roll band. It's a long way to the top. It's a long way to the top if you wanna rock and roll.
So when was this a song here? When was this released here? I've never heard this before.
Correct me if I'm wrong, YouTube. I think it did get a release in around 76 or so on either the TNT album. I'm not sure, but it got re-released on Who Made Who, if I remember right. So in the early 80s. So this song was a weird one because it was an early one they did in Australia, but they didn't really start to break in the US until right around 1980.
Well, what would they release this as? I mean, where would this have been played? On rock stations? Where would...
I think they were super popular in Melbourne and in Australia, in the rock scene there. But when they tried to go to the UK and break in, punk and disco was huge.
Was everything.
And so they were fighting against kind of that genre. Because
Gotcha.
if you know, again, for people who know guitar and stuff, if you listen to their guitar work, it's really just quintessential rock and roll. You know, we're talking like Chuck Berry and Little Richard.
I was noticing that.
It's very old school rock and roll. And at this time, you've got like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and those people. It's a really different sound. It's a really different aesthetic. They're all about partying and having fun. Like you listen to the song, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. It's fun, quintessentially fun.
Oh my God.
And punk wasn't. Punk was about anger.
Yeah,
and
punk was about fighting the system.
That's not what they're about.
Okay, I have to ask, how many other bands have a bagpipe solo in the middle of their song?
Not many. I think we'd have to ask Ricky about that. There's a specific term for this in music theory whenever you use a instrument from a different culture in another type of music. Is it exocytism or something like that? Ricky, you'd have to... I should have asked Ricky. But there's a name for that. But not many, I don't think.
But they are Scottish.
Originally, yes, correct, yeah.
So it's their culture,
Their
right?
culture, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, apparently there was a huge immigration from Scotland to Australia during that time period in the mid-50s because Scotland experienced one of the worst winters they'd ever had. And so you had a ton of Scots who were like, let's get the hell out of here.
So then their families moved here, but they would have been born in Australia.
No, they were like 5, 6 when they moved there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's their instrument.
They're Scots, yeah.
Okay.
I think Bond was actually older when he moved to Australia. The Young brothers moved there a little younger, but Bond was older. Now, interestingly enough, we call them acdc, but apparently in Australia it's still popular to call them acadaka.
No!
Yeah, apparently in places in Australia they're still acadaka. As an acdc fan, I didn't know that. I had to look that part up, but yeah, there's still some Aussies who call them acadaka.
But I can see what you mean. This feels like traditional rock and roll. It does not feel like heavy metal or anything else.
No.
Why did they get lumped with that? Because I always think of AC/DC with that name. It feels like it would be part of the Metallica bunch, part of that other stuff.
So they obviously toured with all of them, and they fit in with all of those bands, but I agree they are fundamentally, in my head, different. And they're different because AC/DC, while they did have some like ballad songs, they did have some more introspective songs, at their core, they are about having fun.
They're a party band.
A party band. And I think they would even agree with that. And in fact, I pulled let's see here, where does he say it? Let's see. I can't find it. Okay, so there are folks who say that all AC/DC songs sound the same. Angus got annoyed with that, and he tweeted about it. He said, "I'm sick to death of people saying we've made 11 albums that sound exactly the same. In fact, we have made 12 albums." And his reaction to that was, when people buy a Snickers bar, they want a Snickers bar. When people want to listen to AC/DC and have fun, they want to listen to AC/DC and have fun. So that's what we're doing.
You know, that's kind of nice.
I love it. I love the fact that they know what they do, and they do it better than anyone else, and they're going to do what they do.
Because, you know, I'd be really hacked off if I bought a Kit Kat and there was a Snickers in there.
I'd be mad if I bought an AC/DC album, it was Nickelback. So yeah, I would be furious. What the fuck is this? I want to hear Angus on the guitar.
The other thing is, just looking at them, compared to some of the heavy metal bands that you showed me, or the more, they're all smiles and having fun.
Way fun.
Whereas the other ones, it's a darker mood. It's a darker everything. You can tell these guys are just, let's just play.
Let's just have fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
So who did the writing for them?
Primarily Malcolm and Angus, the two guitar players. They would write the rhythms and they would write all of that stuff, and then they would let Bond and help Bond write the lyrics to stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So one of the things that Angus has always said, he's the lead guitar player, the one with the cap, the schoolboy. One of the things that he has always said is that the lyrics are kind of ancillary to the music and the mood. So they create the music and the rhythm and the groove.
And that informs the lyrics.
the lyrics. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, there's a little bit more to that story, and I'm going to hold off on that. But there's a little bit more to that I'll explain more of in just a minute.
Okay. I just have to say, you've got to know that these bagpipe players are excited because they can't be doing more than weddings and other things like this. Here you are doing on a truck, in a flatbed truck down the street playing rock and roll. This has got to be fun for them.
That is such a great point. You know, they probably get called out to cultural event days.
Yes.
They get brought to schools. Hey kids, this is what a bagpipe sounds like, and they play Amazing Grace.
Yes.
And then these guys call up, we've got a thing. You want to do this? It's a long way to the top. Oh, you got to know. They're like, yes,
please, and thank you.
Okay, so that was in 1975.
That was a lot of fun.
Great, right?
They're fun, yes.
So here's, we're going to watch one more by them.
Okay.
But I want to read this to you first. So acdc has sold more than 20 million records worldwide, including 75 million albums in the United States alone, making them the 9th highest selling artist in the United States and the 16th best selling artist worldwide ever. So Back in Black, which we'll listen to a few from in just a minute, has sold an estimated 50 million units worldwide, making it the 3rd highest selling album by any artist and the highest selling album by any singular band.
You're kidding.
Huge. Now,
wow.
Let's see. So that video we watched was filmed in '76 in February for the Australian music television program Countdown. Let's see. It featured the band and members of Rats of Tobruk pipe band on the back of that truck. Cost around $380 to film. Yeah. Now, the next one we're going to do is, I think, to answer your question, why they got lumped in with bands like Metallica.
Okay, but is it going to answer the question why you're making me wear devil horns? Oh. I see. Okay, I get it now.
Angus would wear them in concert.
Okay.
So every ACDC fan sees you and goes, hey, we're doing ACDC today. That's what we're doing today.
Okay, I feel better.
This one is called Highway to Hell. And this was one of the songs you remember hearing.
I've heard, I remember hearing this.
I think this is why they get lumped in with like Metallica and stuff. Because they have some songs that reference Satan and things like that. And I remember during the Satanic Panic of the 80s.
Yes.
My family got a flyer from the local church about different bands that were trying to recruit kids into Satanism, and AC/DC was literally the first one on the list.
Well, you know, Donnie Marie never said anything about Satan.
That's true. That's very true.
I can see I remember all that, though. I remember this.
And the Christians had it in their head that this stood for After Christ, Devil Comes. That's not a joke, and you'll still hear some Christians say that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And the irony of it, and I want you to listen to the song and we'll look at the lyrics but the irony of it is it doesn't have anything to do with actual hell or Satan. Like everything they're talking about has to do with partying and hanging out with your friends.
Aww.
So this one comes off of, let me make sure I get it right, off the Highway to Hell album in 1980. Here we go. Now, I love this song because this was something Ladi and I talked about before we started filming, like why I loved rock and roll. Because it made me feel like I had a group of friends, that it made me feel like I had a group of folks who felt like I did. And listen to the lyrics of the song. Living easy, loving free, season ticket on a one-way ride, asking nothing, leave me be, taking everything in my stride. Don't need reason, don't need rhyme, ain't nothing that I'd rather do. Going down, party time, my friends are gonna be there too. It made me feel like I got people.
Aww.
I got people. And then they're out there doing Angus is doing the Chuck Berry kick, and it just felt, there's my people. There's my folks.
Oh, that's kind of nice.
No stop signs, speed limit. Nobody's gonna slow me down. Like a wheel, gonna spin it. Nobody's gonna mess me around. Hey, station, pay my dues. Playing in a rocking band. Hey, mama, look at me. I'm on my way to the promised land.
So one of the things that I've always loved about this, I said that Chuck Berry was one of their biggest influences. If you think back to Johnny Be Good, the
Yes.
story in that, same story. I mean, look at what he says. Paying my dues, playing in a rock and roll band. Hey mama, look at me, I'm on the way to the promised land. One day you're gonna seeing lights, singing Johnny Be Good tonight. The end of that song is the same as this. Johnny Be Good is essentially this is essentially Johnny Be Good. It's a story of a young,
Rock and roll person that wants to be in a band, wants
to
to be
see their
famous.
name in lights, singing Johnny Be Good tonight. It's the same stuff. Isn't that cool?
That is nice. This is a good. And look, what's interesting to me is you can just look. He is having so much fun.
Tons of fun. So I almost showed you one called Whole Lotta Rosie. It was one of their biggest songs. It's about a night that Bond spent with a fairly large woman named Rosie.
Okay, is that bigger than this?
I would say Highway to Hell is bigger than Whole
Okay.
Lotta Rosie.
Okay.
But the song is about a drunken night that Bond spent with a fairly large woman named Rosie, who apparently showed him things he had never been shown before. When he met her, reportedly Angus said she met him and she told him, I've slept with 28 famous people this month. And so they get drunk together and he goes back to her place with her friend. He wakes up, and this was the quote from Angus, he wakes up pinned to the wall and he looks over and the big girl whispers to her friend, 29.
Oh my God.
And Angus said, Angus said that Bon would go off in the middle of the night with just, if it looked like it was going to be a good time, Bon was into it.
I'm on the highway to hell. Highway to hell. I'm on the highway to hell. Highway to hell.
So then, Highway to Hell is just a metaphorical hell.
Yeah, it's just about going to party with your friends. They say we're going to hell, fuck it, let's go to hell and have fun.
Okay.
I mean, again, as a kid who was surrounded by fundamentalist Christians, everything that I loved was a sin.
Well, of course.
So, if I'm going to hell, my friends are gonna be there too.
But you can see, I can see then, because they're not very, I think the word is discerning.
Sure.
So the moment you said you're on the highway to hell, of course they went ahead and started saying, these people are evil.
And then they in turn lean into it.
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
They've already damned us anyway.
Don't stop me. And I'm going down all the way. On the highway to hell.
Oh, see, that's just fun.
So that was one of their biggest hits.
Yeah, I remember hearing this.
1980. Then several months later, Bon goes out with some folks in London, drives back home. He passes out in the back seat. His friend decides to leave him. The next morning he comes out and Bon's dead. 1980. Bon had gone out, partied a little too hard. The official autopsy was asphyxiation. He dies in the back seat. They had already started working on the follow-up album. Malcolm and Angus had already been workshopping rhythms and leads and songs, and Bon had yet to do anything. And boom, Bon dies. So the band is left in a, what do we do? What do we do?
What did they do?
It's going to be in part two. Going to be in part two. So, in 1980, the band was at a crossroads. Where do we go from here?
I just want to ask you one thing. What do you think about this caused them to break through punk and everything else that was ever? Because this is different. This is different than all that other stuff. So there must have been something about this that called to somebody to make this out there when nothing else was out there like this.
I think, and obviously, YouTube, you can disagree with me, but I think the reason is this. Punk, like grunge, like disco, was a type of music grounded in a zeitgeist of the time. It was grounded in that moment in time in history. Whereas stuff like blues and old school rock like Chuck Berry style, Little Richard style rock and roll is still listened to today because it's a universal expression of something and it's not grounded in time. Whereas I feel like punk was grounded in time. Grunge, grounded in time. Whereas this, again, if aliens asked me, what's rock and roll? It's Highway to Hell. I think
I can understand that. That makes sense.
I think it's because this music is such a pure distillation of blues rock and roll that it's timeless. And so yeah, they had trouble breaking in because punk was still gathering steam, but
Yeah.
punk was finite. There was going to be a moment where
Where was no more.
the culture didn't have a reason for it. And once that reason stopped existing, punk kind of fell away. Same thing with glam rock, same thing with grunge. But through all of that, this band has been doing this since 1973. And it still resonates.
Yeah, it does.
So, episode 2.
Episode 2?
We'll pick up where we left off. Does that sound okay?
Am I still wearing the horns?
You don't have to wear the horns.
Okay.
You don't have to wear the
They're
horns.
digging into my head because they're meant for people
I'm
with
sorry.
hair. They have these little bitey things. They actually hurt.
All right, folks. Come back and see, or in episode 2, I'll put a link to it up here, and we'll do the rest of the story. Sound good?
Yes, thank
Perfect.
you.